Donc, à ce stade-ci, je dois présenter nos deux conférenciers de ce matin, donc Dr. Trevor Hancock et professeur Astrid Boussel. Trevor Hancock est un médecin spécialiste en santé publique. Il est consultant en promotion de la santé, professeur et chercheur à l'École de santé publique et de politique sociale de l'Université de Victoria en Colombie-Britannique. Il est un des fondateurs du mouvement de villes et communautés en santé et il a initié le concept de politique publique favorable à la santé dans les années 80. Au cours des dernières années, Trevor Hancock a piloté un groupe de travail auprès de l'Association canadienne pour la santé publique, ce qui a donné lieu à la production d'un rapport sur les déterminants écologiques de la santé en 2015. Il a été réviseur externe pour la Fondation Rockefeller et pour la commission Lancet sur la santé planétaire. Il a cofondé l'Association canadienne des médecins pour l'environnement ainsi que la Coalition canadienne pour des soins de santé écologiques. Quant à professeure Boussel, elle est professeure titulaire à la Faculté de médecine et des sciences de la santé de l'Université de Sherbrooke depuis 2010 et chercheure au centre de recherche de l'hôpital Charlemagne. Elle détient notamment une expertise en analyse du système de santé et en économie de la santé. Auteur de plusieurs ouvrages, effectivement, elle est bien reconnue dans son milieu. Lorsque l'équipe nous a présenté un projet de journée thématique, nous avons trouvé le sujet tellement intéressant que nous les avons incités à nous l'offrir en plénière. Et c'est dans ce sens-là que nous avons réussi effectivement à ce que M. Trevor Hancock vienne nous parler ce matin. Donc, Trevor, it's a nice... I'm pleased to have you after making sure that you were the right flight, and the right hotel, and everything. So now you're all with us to be able. So la conférence sera en anglais. Il y a des casques d'écoute qui sont disponibles. So Trevor, please come.
Bonjour tout le monde. Mes chers collègues, je regrette que je ne parle pas français assez bien pour faire une conférence technicale en français ici. From now on, I will speak in English. But the slides are available in both English and French and will be available to you after this. And in fact, I won't go through all of the slides I have. I have 67 slides and 30 minutes. And although I talk fast, and the interpreters told me that if I spoke too fast, they would be very angry with me. So I will be covering most, but not all, of what is in my presentation. In the introduction, it was pointed out that it was about not just the last 20 years, but also the next 20 years. And the topic I want to talk about today, public health in the Anthropocene, is going to be a growing part of your work in the next 20 years. And so it's early days in understanding the health implications, and it's early days in seeing the health impacts, although we are seeing them. But in the next 20 years, for those of you who will still be practicing over that period, this is going to become of growing importance to you. Let me just begin by asking how many people in the room have heard of the Anthropocene? Okay, that's a good beginning. How many people know what it means? Okay, I'm tempted to say come up here and explain it, but I guess that's why I'm here. So this is what I'm going to talk about, cover most or all of these topics. I want to spend a bit of time at the end talking about the public health agenda. What does this mean for public health? So this is what the Anthropocene is in a nutshell. We have become a major force, and we will show up in the geologic record. We already do. And there is some debate as to when the Anthropocene began, variously dated from the middle of the 19th century to the middle of the 20th century. I think consensus is emerging that it was in the mid-20th century when things began to change in a big way, and I'll come back to that. So it has actually been proposed by the earth scientists, the geologists, that they consider giving the label the Anthropocene to the geologic epoch that we are now entering. So this is still under debate in the formal scientific process, but meanwhile, this has become, if you like, a metaphor for our power as human beings and the power of our economy and our society. There's a wonderful little video, which I don't have time to show you, but you can Google it and find it. It's 3.5 minutes and it's worth watching, called Welcome to the Anthropocene. And one of the things in that little video that was prepared for a conference in London 4 years ago is that we move more earth and rock than natural processes of erosion and rivers. So we are equal to or exceeding natural processes in that and many other areas. We have started a 6th great extinction, for example. The last one was 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs were wiped out. So we are that powerful, and you can't be that powerful and change the planet in the ways we are changing it without that having profound health implications, and that's what I want to talk about. This was the conference in 2012. So 4 years ago, the Canadian Public Health Association established a project which I've had the honor of leading to look at the potential health impacts of these major global ecological changes. And we looked at 4 categories. Actually, we added a 5th. This is the original slide. We added ocean acidification as a fifth major global change. So a lot of our attention focuses on climate and change in particular, and atmospheric change, air pollution, and acid rain, and so on, ozone depletion. But we need to include within these global changes both pollution and ecotoxicity. Now, ecotoxicity, if that is not a familiar term to you, means that every one of us from birth carries a body burden throughout our lives of persistent organic pollutants that we created, mainly since the Second World War, since the 1950s. And we don't understand the health implications of that. We perhaps never will. For one thing, there isn't a controlled population. But it's not just us, it's all other species too. So you find it in polar bears, and you find it in bald eagles, and on and on. And in top predators, and we are a top predator. Resource depletion, so particularly water and soil, the things we grow our food in, and the level of degradation of particularly farmlands. And then, as I mentioned, a 6th great extinction. We wanted to look at what's driving these changes, and we wanted to propose an action agenda. So we reported back about a year ago, and on the left is the discussion document that CPHA released in May of last year, and on the right, what we have called the report in brief. It's 100 pages. We're still working on a final version of the report, which will be really a book, 500 pages. And it's taking me longer than I had hoped, but one of these days. But the 100-pager is pretty good. We're not the only ones. As was mentioned at the beginning, I was an external reviewer for this report, the Lancet Rockefeller Commission on, or actually they call it Rockefeller Lancet. I guess Rockefeller paid for it, so they get their name first. The Rockefeller Lancet Commission on Planetary Health. And in fact, one of the commissioners on that, a good friend of mine, Tony Capon, who was scientific director of the UN University's Institute for Global Health, has just, as of a month ago, taken up a new post at the University of Sydney in their School of Public Health, where he is the first professor of planetary health in the world. So this is beginning to make inroads into our thinking about the health of the populations. And their title was Safeguarding Human Health in the Anthropocene Epoch. That report came out about a year ago. One of the things that we wanted to challenge was this, that although if you go to the Ottawa Charter, you will find reference there to ecosystems, the need to take a socio-ecological approach, somehow we lost the ecology part of that. And so we focus very much on the social determinants of health. And the WHO's commission was on the social determinants of health, not anything else. So it didn't really look very much at the ecological. And we're not saying throw out the social determinants. What we're saying is there are social and there are ecological determinants, and they interact. And so we need to recognize the socio-ecological nature of our environment, and we need to respond in what we call an eco-social approach to integrate those two, because the social changes are not separate from the ecological changes, and vice versa. If you think about it, the most fundamental determinants of our health are air, water, and food. Where do they come from? They come from nature. So does the fuels and materials that we use to power our society and build our infrastructure. It is natural systems that protect us from UV radiation. Natural systems detoxify many of the wastes we produce. Not all of them, not the persistent organic pollutants. And it is natural systems that have given us, for the last 11,000 years, a relatively stable and livable climate. So these are the most fundamental determinants of our health. And if you work in the field of population and public health, you have to recognize that, because without understanding that, you will not be able to safeguard the health of the population and address these issues. Very briefly, what are some of these key ecological changes that are underway? Well, as I said, it is more than climate change, and I won't repeat this slide. A group led by Will Stephan, who is at the Stockholm Resilience Institute and the Australian National University in Canberra, recently, this was about a year ago, looked at 9 key Earth ecosystems. And you see the 9 of them listed there. And they tried to figure out, was there a boundary beyond which we shouldn't go in terms of the state of those ecosystems? And you will find this chart in their paper. And for each of them, they tried to assess, was there a boundary? For 3 of them, the ones in grey with question marks, they couldn't find a boundary. They couldn't define one. Things like what they called novel entities, which is persistent organic pollutants and genetically modified organisms and nanoparticles, all these things that we're putting out into the environment in a very diffuse way. But in the area of extinctions, top left, and in the area of phosphorus and nitrogen flows, bottom left, we've already crossed into an area of high risk. We are in an area of uncertainty in the yellow areas, which include climate change and land system change, and we're beginning to push into that in ocean acidification. So we are at or approaching safe, what they called safe operating spaces. We are beyond the safe operating space in several of these, and we are approaching that boundary in others. These are fundamental determinants of our health, and we are crossing boundaries we should not cross. We have crossed boundaries we should not cross. This has profound health implications. It has implications not just for us, but what are we doing to other species? This is as good a vision of the Great Extinction as you'll get. This just came out a few weeks ago, the latest version. Every 2 years, the Worldwide Fund for Nature puts out the Living Planet report. And a key index is this, the Living Planet Index. They're looking at about 11,000 populations, monitored populations of about 3,700 species. And they've been monitoring them since 1970. And as you can see there has been a 58% decline in the population of those species since 1970. It's much worse than that in some places and in some areas. So you'll notice that at the bottom, in the freshwater ecosystems, there has been an 81% decline in those populations. The salmon, the cod are two of the more obvious ones, amphibians, frogs, toads, and so on. We are devastating other species, but we're a species. And as Chief Seattle said 150 or more years ago, whatever we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. So we shouldn't imagine that we are immune from these same hazards. We are not immune from extinction. I'm not suggesting we're going to go extinct. We are like dandelions and rats. We're very resistant, very tough. We'll survive. Our societies and civilizations, as we now know them, may not survive. But I think we'll be there, along with the rats and the dandelions. So what are some of these human driving forces? This is much too detailed for you to see, but you can get the general picture. This comes out of that same group of Will Stephan and others, was published about a year ago. They document what they call the Great Acceleration that has been happening particularly since the 1950s. So on the left in red are a whole bunch of key socioeconomic trends. And although it's very, very hard, if not impossible, to see on this scale, where it starts to kick up in many of them is about the 1950s, some of them earlier than that. And on the right, you can see the Earth system trends in green. And again, a big upward kick starting for the most part in the 1950s. So since the 1950s, things have accelerated vastly. And that is the challenge we are facing and the impacts we're having. This is another way of expressing that impact. This is the ecological footprint that some of you will no doubt be familiar with, developed actually at the University of British Columbia by Bill Rees and one of his doctoral students at the time, Mathis Wackenagel, who now runs the Ecological Footprint Institute. This is also in the Living Planet report. It's their second key indicator. So this is a measure in terms of how many hectares of land it takes to support us in the style to which we are accustomed. And there is a line that you can just see off to the left that runs from about 10 and runs slightly upwards, and that is the world's capacity to reproduce bioproductive, to be bioproductive, to produce the natural system resources that we use. And we have exceeded the Earth's capacity for the last, since about the 1970s. And again, at the same time as you see that decline, although the decline was underway before that in the Living Planet Index. So currently, globally, we use about 1.6 planets worth of biocapacity. Now, if you've looked and checked recently, you'll notice there's only one Earth. We don't have a spare planet out there, and we're not about to, no matter what the fantasies of Mars may be. So we are going to have to learn how to live within one planet's worth of capacity. And here in high-income countries such as Canada, we currently are using about 4 or 5 planets worth. So we are actually going to have to reduce our ecological footprint by 75 to 80% to get back within one planet's worth, and to provide the room that other societies, low-income and middle-income countries, need to expand their use of the Earth's resources, because they do need a certain level of economic development for good health. So we have to have the two going on together. We have to reduce, they have to increase their ecological footprints. A big chunk of that, let me just go back, if you notice the grey there, is the carbon footprint. So more than half of the total footprint is the carbon footprint, which leads me to say it's the carbon, stupid, which is sort of a rebuttal of Bill Clinton's famous slogan when he was running for president, it's the economy, stupid. And numbers of us have said at various times, no, it's the environment, stupid, or no, it's the people, stupid, or in this case, no, it's the carbon. Burning from fossil fuels has been the largest part of the the ecological footprint for more than half a century. It was 36% in 1961. It's 53% now. People have created what is called the carbon budget. This is from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change from its 2014 report. If we want to have a 2/3 chance of keeping global warming below 2 degrees centigrade, never mind 1.5, which is the sort of ambitious, hopeful target, but 2 degrees, we can add no more, they have calculated, no more than 2,900 billion tons of carbon dioxide cumulative from 1870, when we started to burn it seriously. We've already put out, since 1870, as of 2011, 1,900 gigatons. We're putting out globally about 40 gigatons annually, and of course that means in the 5 years since 2011, we've put out another 200 gigatons. So we're currently sitting at about 2,100 gigatons out of our allowed 2,900. That means we can only emit 800 gigatons ever, if we want to stay below 2 degrees centigrade. So for the rest of industrial societies and our lives and existence, no more than 800 gigatons if we want to stay below 2 degrees. So in a report from a group called Oil Change International that came out a few months ago, they said already, based on data from a reputable oil and gas monitoring company in Norway, already the amount of energy of carbon dioxide in the existing and under construction global oil and gas fields and coal mines is 940 gigatons. So we already have enough in production or in development to exceed the 800. So we actually have to have no new fossil fuel extraction or transportation infrastructure should be built. That means no pipelines, no Kinder Morgan, no Eastern Pipeline, no, what's the one going south? Whatever that one is. Anyway, no. And already Mr. Trudeau has started to say, yes. This has to stop. This is a public health issue. Public health needs to be saying no loud and strong. Because there are limits to growth. And back in 1972, the Club of Rome said there are limits to growth. Those in original forecasts of 1972 were dismissed by the business elite, by the political elite, by the economic elite, by a lot of people saying, oh, it's rubbish, we'll be fine, it's just bad science. What the MIT group anticipated was that by the middle of the 21st century, there would be a substantial collapse of the global ecosystem and economy unless we changed our business as usual approach. 40 years later, Chris Turner at the, I think it's Chris, at the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation in Canberra, sort of the Natural Science Council of Australia, really. He went and looked at what they had anticipated in 1972, and as it says here, 40 years later, we appear to be on track with what they anticipated. And when he went back and looked at it 6 more years later, in 2014, the business as usual BAU scenario aligns well with historical data. So what they anticipated in 1972 is happening. And in their models back then, that anticipated probable collapse of the global ecosystem and economy in the mid-21st century, which is only 35 years away, a generation away. So, what are the health and human development impacts of all of this? Well, at this point, we found only a limited understanding. I should say that everything I'm saying here is based on the CPHA paper that I mentioned earlier, some of it a bit updated. So what we know about the health impacts of global ecological change is at this point sketchy. It is preliminary. It's often speculative. But we're quite certain that the impacts are significant. Also, many of these changes interact. So climate change causes species extinction. Pollution, and particularly ecotoxicity, can lead to reproductive failure, and so on. So they interact with each other and multiply each other. And so what we can say is that we need to understand the overall system change and its health impacts. Back 10 years ago now, 11 years ago, the UN commissioned in 2000 a Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, and they published their report in 2005. And this is what they said in their key summary document. I want to highlight the piece in red. The ability of the planet's ecosystem to sustain future generations can no longer be taken for granted. That, I think, is a scary statement. And it is a massive population health impact statement. The Lancet Commission, in their report, said, "We have been mortgaging the health of future generations to realize economic and development gains. We have been improving our health at the expense of the health of future generations, and that has to stop." So we're facing significant impacts now, all a bit gloomy. We have an entire chapter in our report on imagining a better future, because we think we can and must imagine a better future. And we have a whole chapter on finding hope. And I like this definition of hope from a couple of our public health colleagues, actually. A couple of years ago, hope is the commitment to positivity in the face of adversity. And that's what we need to look for. And there are all sorts of messages of hope. First off, there's good reason to believe that shifting to a more sustainable way of life is going to be good for health. Lower health impacts from energy use and air pollution, lower impacts from a healthier diet, and many other potential benefits. Secondly, we've done this before. If you were to go back to the industrial slums of Europe and North America in the mid-19th century, it was horrifying. And if you'd looked at it at that time, you'd have said, what can we ever do to change this? Well, we changed it. We changed it dramatically. We've been here before. We can make massive social and economic and environmental change. It's at a bigger scale, but then we know more and we have more resources. We're not alone. We have many potential partners, in particular the environment movement. And I have said for many years, and that's why I helped to create the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. I've said for many years, the environment movement for the last 40 years or 50 years has been doing public health's job. And we need to align ourselves with the environmental movement and not go in there saying, it's okay, you can relax, public health is here, we'll save it for you. They have been doing it, we need to join them with some humility. For the most part, we know what needs to be done. And this I find actually a bit depressing, but at the same time, there's a powerful message in it. There's really nothing that we're talking about today that we didn't know in at least outline 40 years ago. There's nothing in terms of the solutions we're proposing that we didn't have 40 years ago. So we know what needs to be done. It's not the knowledge that's been absent, it's the political and social will, and that's what we have to help put together. And in fact, there's all sorts of progress. When I look globally, I tend to be pessimistic. When I look locally, I become hopeful. There are many, many things going on at the local level. That's why healthy cities is so important. because change is not going to come from the top. If you think Donald Trump is going to buy any of this, forget it. It's going to have to come from the bottom. We want change to be accepted at the top and preferably to be promoted at the top, but I'm not pinning my faith on that. It has to be local action, and that's why healthy cities, particularly healthy and sustainable cities, and cities get it, local governments get it. They get it much better than higher levels of government. So I pin my hope on local governments, and I'm so glad you're celebrating 30 years of healthy cities as well, because healthy cities started also in 1986. There's lots of co-benefits from energy efficiency, from public transportation, from a low-meat diet. We're going to have to shift to a low-meat diet too because of the ecological impacts of our food systems. And lots of benefits from local economies and many, many others. I don't have time to list them all. So let me talk very briefly about the public health agenda. What does all this mean for us, for you, in your day-to-day lives? Well, our ultimate message in our report is this, that the population health impacts of the ecological determinants of health are large, they are comparable to the impact of the social determinants, and the two interact and must be considered as a whole. You cannot separate the social from the ecological. They are two sides of the same coin. We proposed a very simple model, an eco-social model for public health action. And this is it, and I will not go into it in detail, but it makes the point that ecological change and social and economic change interact. Each of them drives population health, and that public health potentially can intervene in many places in that model. As the Worldwide Fund for Nature's Living Planet report said a couple of years ago, ecosystems sustain societies that create economies. It does not work the other way around. We cannot grow ourselves out of this problem. It's growth, economic growth, that has put us in this problem. We're not going to be able to use the old economy to solve the problem that the old economy created. It challenges the very heart of our industrial economic system. This is radical stuff we're talking about. Growth in consumption is not the solution, it's the problem. We need a new economic system that builds all forms of capital at the same time, and we need new measures of progress. So if you look at things like the Genuine Progress Indicator, we have flatlined since the 1970s, even though the GDP has gone up. So we have been feeling better, but doing no better. I'm actually very interested in this new index, the Happy Planet Index. It's very simple. It's life expectancy times well-being or life satisfaction times an inequality adjustment divided by ecological footprint. So how do we get the maximum benefit from the ecological footprint that we have, maintain our quality of life while reducing that? We need to change and improve our thinking on population health. We need a knowledge development and research strategy that looks at the ecological determinants of health, that integrates it into our population health frameworks. We need to educate public health professionals. One of our key working groups coming out of the CPHA task force is a working group on exactly this, and we welcome your participation in it. We need to fund and support research into the ecological determinants. And when it comes to public health value action, we need to change social norms and values. We did it for tobacco. We did it for drunk driving. We did it in the 19th century for industrialized slums. We can do it again, and that's what we have to do. We need to protect people and communities. That's our core job. And we need to protect them from social and economic policies and practices that harm health or widen health inequality. How can we use public health legislation to protect people from ecological harm? How do we protect people from ecological change? And in particular, how do we focus on the more vulnerable populations, both in our own countries and, more importantly, around the world? In healthcare, we need environmentally responsible healthcare. I co-founded also the Canadian Coalition for Green Healthcare. Hospitals should be reducing their ecological footprint just as much as every other part of society should. So how do we reduce our ecological footprint? Act responsibly as hospitals. And then we need to create healthy communities, and this is where the rubber hits the road. We need, as practitioners working mainly at the local level, to create healthy and sustainable communities. We need to work with all of the partners we can find. We need to create a new economics in order to do that and support a shift to an environmentally sustainable, socially just economic and social system. That is the challenge for public health practitioners in the next 20 years, and I will leave you with that challenge.
Thank you, Trevor, for this very thoughtful presentation. Je pense que maintenant tout le monde sait ce qu'est l'Anthropocène, en tout cas ce qu'on appelle en anglais the bad Anthropocene, and I hope we can see the good Anthropocene in the next years. On parle de plus en plus de bon Anthropocène. L'Anthropocène est le résultat de l'industrialisation, vous l'avez dit, Trevor. Ça a commencé à la fin du XIXe siècle. Cette ère industrielle a amené des gains en santé qui ont été majeurs, il faut le souligner. Okay? Des gains en termes d'espérance de vie, des gains en termes de réduction de la mortalité infantile. Ça a amené des gains en termes de réduction de l'extrême pauvreté. Okay? Il y a de moins en moins de gens qui vivent dans l'extrême pauvreté. Ce siècle d'industrialisation a été aussi marqué par des grandes découvertes. Pensons-y un peu. Le téléphone, le transport, l'avion, les moteurs. On a découvert le moteur, on l'a utilisé pour les autos, l'avion, tous nos transports, le train, etc. On a même créé un nouvel espace, le cyberespace, qui n'existait pas au siècle dernier. Ça démontre notre intelligence créative. Okay? L'homme a un pouvoir créateur qui est fondamental et c'est notre source d'espoir qu'on peut faire cette transition du mauvais Anthropocène vers le bon Anthropocène. Trevor Hancock a parlé rapidement de l'approche écosociale en santé publique. Cette approche, c'est la réintégration des déterminants écologiques dans notre approche de santé publique. Okay? Et c'est très important. C'est un aspect qu'on a oublié. Concrètement, comment cette approche écosociale ou cette perspective écosociale de santé publique peut amener des transformations dans nos pratiques de santé publique? Je pense qu'adopter une approche écosociale à la santé publique implique 3 positionnements. Le premier, c'est de revoir nos recommandations en santé publique, okay, en intégrant l'impact écologique de ces recommandations. Je vais vous donner un exemple bien simple. On est en train de rediscuter le guide alimentaire canadien. Okay. Puis, dans le guide alimentaire canadien, on recommande de manger de la viande et du poisson comme source de protéines. Est-ce qu'il est raisonnable à notre époque de recommander une consommation de protéines qui suppose une utilisation si intensive des ressources pour produire de la viande ou par exemple pour le poisson, alors qu'on sait que 80% des stocks monitorés de poissons ou des bancs de poissons monitorés sont pêchés au-delà des seuils qui leur permettent leur reproduction? Non, ça n'est pas raisonnable. Okay? Pourtant, pour la santé humaine, la consommation de viande et de poisson est recommandée. D'accord? Mais à un moment donné, on arrive, si on ne tient pas compte des déterminants écologiques, on arrive à des solutions que l'on recommande en santé publique qui viennent comme un retour finalement un retour de bâton, nuire à la santé des populations. Okay? Donc de plus en plus, il va falloir intégrer les déterminants écologiques dans nos pratiques de santé publique et mesurer aussi, réviser l'impact de nos recommandations au niveau écologique. Donc première chose, revoir pour nos systèmes de monitorage, nos systèmes de planification, nos systèmes d'évaluation de façon à intégrer l'impact écologique de nos recommandations en santé publique. Première chose. Deuxième chose, il va falloir influencer les politiques publiques. Okay? À peu près 80% des Canadiens sont urbains actuellement. Les villes ont un potentiel de transformation qui est vraiment intéressant. Okay? Mais ce que ça implique, c'est de travailler aussi à l'alimentation, à repenser nos façons de nous déplacer, repenser nos façons de nous alimenter, repenser nos façons d'organiser nos villes. Okay? comme individus, nous n'avons pas toutes ces expertises. Okay? Il va falloir travailler avec des urbanistes, avec des gens spécialisés en transport, avec des gens qui connaissent l'agriculture. Il va falloir travailler avec des experts de différents domaines. Réellement travailler en intersectorialité. Okay? Puis ça, différents domaines d'expertise, mais aussi différents niveaux. Travailler au niveau des politiques nationales, travailler au niveau régional, travailler au niveau municipal et travailler au niveau local. Okay? Donc vraiment, un travail intersectoriel et multiniveau, et ça va être fondamental pour être capable d'influencer les politiques publiques. Pour pouvoir le faire, il va falloir aussi, et ça c'est mon troisième point, s'engager. Okay? Ça va prendre un engagement de chacun d'entre nous à la hauteur de notre expertise. Ça va prendre un réinvestissement de la fonction politique de la santé publique. Okay? Et ça, c'est vraiment important. On n'y arrivera pas si chacun d'entre nous ne s'engage pas. Il va falloir s'engager à notre niveau. Et s'engager. La santé publique, clairement, peut jouer un rôle de leadership. Comme je vous l'ai dit, l'expertise est portée par différents acteurs. Il y a déjà des gens qui travaillent pour le bon Anthropocène. L'idée, c'est d'informer les gens, de mobiliser les gens, d'organiser les réseaux, de soutenir ces réseaux-là, de travailler à la conception et à la formation de coalitions qui vont travailler ensemble pour le bon Anthropocène. Et là, il y a clairement un rôle que la santé publique peut jouer. Vous allez me dire, c'est ambitieux. Oui, c'est un agenda ambitieux. Est-ce que c'est utopique? Non, c'est certainement pas utopique. On peut y arriver. On a déjà montré, l'utopie, c'est finalement de penser qu'on peut continuer d'organiser nos sociétés comme elles sont actuellement. C'est ça l'utopie. Okay? Nous pouvons ensemble faire ce changement, faire le bon Anthropocène. Trevor Hancock va maintenant recevoir vos questions. Richard, je te relaisse la parole. Merci.